You know that post that's like, what if I flop? Oh my darling, but what if you slay? Kind of how I've been feeling recently, and I'm both people in that equation. Also, I know that's a real quote, and that's not the original. Anyways. Today we're talking about something that I feel is a bit topical to my life, and that is self-love. Not having self-love, wanting self-love. The past month I've been feeling a little bit goofy, a little bit off in terms of my overall mental health, well-being. Today I woke up, spring in my damn step. I was like, I'm gonna start dancing around the house and start dancing out the door. Which is very different than how I've been feeling for many days leading up to today. But anyway, since I feel like I have recently experienced the losing of self-love and the regaining of some self-love, I thought it'd be a good time to just talk about the idea as a whole. This is an advice session, and no, it's been a few weeks since I've done one of these. Like I mentioned 5 seconds ago, I've been feeling kind of weird and down, so not that I think I'm amazing and awesome and everyone should follow my advice and I should give advice all the time, because I'm not a therapist, but I feel like when you have a very negative headspace, it's kind of hard to talk through things in a neutral or more positive mindset, which is what I want to do with the advice sessions. So let's just hop right into it, honestly. I don't have much else to say. I'm going to talk more about my channel and some life updates at the end of the video, but for now I want to just get right into it. So the question/statement says, I'm a high schooler and I always feel like I don't fit in completely, as if everyone is in on an inside joke that I'm not in. How to normalize to myself that being alone is okay. So I'm not saying this person doesn't have self-love, but I feel like this kind of fits in to where I really started to enjoy being around myself, and that is through being alone. Also, while this person said they're in high school, I feel like this kind of applies to anyone in life. In the grand scheme of life, high school is a small part, but your whole entirety of life is always just kind of a different version of high school. There's always hierarchies, social hierarchies, feeling of aloneness, having to do stuff you don't want to do, like going to class in high school. So while I'm gonna be talking about this sort of in the context of high school, I'm also gonna be talking about it in a little bit more generally. You preface this question with feeling like everyone else is in on an inside joke and you're not. I think it's completely normal to feel this way. I also think that you are not alone in this feeling, even in your own particular high school. There are probably people who you wouldn't expect that also feel like they're alone, also feel like they're not on the inside joke, and they're just trying to get through it as you are. So there are two things aside from that with this question that I want to talk about. So to normalize yourself being alone. In the past few years, how I've learned to normalize being alone definitely happened after high school. When I was in high school, when I was alone, girl brain was not on. Watching Vine, watching YouTube videos, which I still do, not Vine, but I still watch YouTube videos. But I didn't have any hobbies. I would go to the gym. Like my hobbies would be, I don't know, taking photography. I would sometimes do that. Like I wasn't booked and busy with hobbies after school. How I began to normalize being alone, low-key one part of it kind of had to hit rock bottom with it all. Feeling so very alone, so very bored with myself that the only other way to go was feeling better about being alone. Going through college, post-grad, I realized that if I'm going to be spending that much time by myself, I might as well enjoy it a little bit, which now I definitely enjoy it. I think the first step to normalize to yourself that being alone is okay is to make being alone maybe not more fun than hanging out with friends, but equally as fun as hanging out with friends. So that after school, after work, after whatever you're doing for the day, being happy that you'll have time to do the stuff that you're actually excited about. Writing, reading, working on a project, doing a craft, whatever that is. So that when you feel alone at school or in your life, work, whatever, it doesn't feel as important because you know you have your real life after. I think how I got to it was leaning into the things that I already knew I liked. Thinking back was definitely getting more into working out again because I had a year to year-ish part of my life where I didn't work out at all, which also probably contributed to me feeling depressed in some ways, to not moving my body and being stuck inside because of COVID. That's neither here nor there. But leaning into what I enjoyed, going to the gym, finding some good music, being excited to go. And then slowly from there, I picked up steam. At that time, I think I did make some YouTube videos. They are all private now. You'll never find them because they were never really seen by anyone. We got that 20 views. They were kind of vloggy. Anyways, I started leaning into my creativity more, and with naturally becoming more independent and more into my own interests, I felt better about being alone. I felt less concerned when I was alone because I started to enjoy being around myself more. So I didn't really need someone there with me, you know. Obviously I still had my friends that I hung out with, but the more I loved myself, the more I didn't even think about the fact that I was doing something alone. I was just doing something, if you catch my drift. The next step I would say, which is harder, is to not focus on what other people are doing. Let me start by saying, in the best way possible, no one is thinking about you that much. That spans for everyone all around the world. No one is thinking about you as much as you are thinking about you. You can also not think about them. While there's the idea, especially in movies, TV shows, the normal person, you know, they're hanging out with friends at the club after, not the club, but a club after school, or if you're out of high school, which is also this pertains to you, your coworkers that all seem to hang out. I think when you accept that that's just not something that everyone does, and honestly, I would argue to say, especially post high school, it's more normal to be alone than to be with a bunch of people. Like most people, especially if you're a single adult. But the idea of always being surrounded by people and always having fun just isn't realistic. So I'd say maybe not consuming a bunch of media of people hanging out all the time. Step one of that. But two, just to remind yourself that you don't have to compare yourself to other people. That your experience is definitely not an individual experience, and not necessarily in a bad way. I will say with this question though, well, I think it's great to be alone. I spend a lot of time alone. I love being alone. When you're growing up or are younger, not even necessarily just in high school, but early 20s, 30s, literally when fucking ever, it is still important to have friends. You know, it's obviously easier said than done, especially when you're in high school. Like if you have a really small high school, it's harder to make a new friend than if you live a big one, or if you're in a new city, you know, post grad, whatever. But in my opinion, being alone and my time alone holds so much more weight when I have the other end of the spectrum, you know, having some friends to talk to, hang out with, even if it's not necessarily anyone I'm super close to. But I know, you know, when I go to work, I talk to my coworkers. They're very nice. I like them. And it feels even better getting home and having some alone time when I spent time having social interaction. Not everyone probably feels the same about that, but personally for me, that's kind of how I feel. But in the context of high school, I don't know if you've ever seen this movie. One of my favorite movies ever, Perks of Being a Wallflower. If you've never seen it, recommend, but I'll look it up before you watch it if you haven't seen it. But I think this kind of fits into your question. So I almost said Percy because Logan Lerman plays Percy Jackson, and Logan Lerman also plays Charlie in Perks of Being a Wallflower movie. But in Perks of Being a Wallflower, our main character Charlie goes into high school feeling very alone. Some stuff happened in middle school, which is a big part of the movie and book and whatever, but for the context of this conversation right now, not that important. He feels alone, and eventually he meets a quirky group. They're all seniors, but they're all weird like him. He feels comfortable. It takes a little bit of time, but eventually he becomes a part of their group. Some other thing happened. But what I'm saying here, this might not make sense for a second here. It's a lot easier to feel alone when you have some people to feel alone with, you know, kind of contradictory to the word alone. But I think if it's possible, you should lean into your friends you have, if you have them, or maybe try to make some new friends, maybe some other people that you kind of feel might not feel that they exactly fit in. But I think having friends is a part of self-acceptance. When you're always by yourself, it's very hard to not overthink about your whole life, about who you are. And sometimes it's nice to bounce just your thoughts, ideas, the things you like, the things you hate off of other people so you can get to know yourself better, which makes your alone time more enjoyable. I feel like a lot of advice when they talk about learning to love yourself, enjoy being alone, purely focuses on kind of journaling, doing introspection. But I think you can also gain some insightful introspection from talking to other people, especially if they match your wavelength. I also think then you maybe won't feel like you're not in on the joke if you have one or two other people that you can have your own little group with, or just one other person. You won't feel the need to have that natural comparison with other people. I know you're asking about being alone, but I do think this is an important part of growing up and being a person, finding some community, whatever that may be. Literally, they could be online friends. You don't have to see them in person necessarily, but having someone that you feel in on the joke with will help you focus less on feeling out. in your real life. My last thing that I would say for normalizing being alone, romanticize it a little bit. Make a good playlist and sit alone, take a walk alone, you're in school and class alone. Let it speak to you. Feel like the main character. I know I just said no one's thinking about you, but internally you can feel like the main character a little bit. I think romanticizing it helps in some ways. Obviously you wouldn't want to romanticize it forever, and it's kind of unrealistic in a way, but I think sometimes you have to. I know sometimes when I leave work, when I put my headphones in, I'm walking home, I have a good ass playlist on, and I can feel that peace, and I can feel happy with myself. You know, sometimes I imagine myself, I'm wearing a cute outfit, walking in my cute outfit. Wow, she looks so cool walking by. Wow, no one's thinking that, but wow, she looks so cool. Like, spinning the idea into, oh my god, they're looking at me because they probably hate me, spinning it into, maybe they're looking at me because I look really fucking cool right now. Maybe they know what I'm listening to, they don't. Maybe they hear my music come through my headphone and they think, wow, she has amazing music taste. I think romanticizing it can just be fun. That's just kind of a silly tip. So I think I answered that question. Okay, next question. So this next question fits into self-love in a different way. Not that first one really was about self-love, but I'm looping it in as it is. So this next question is about being more intentional. So it's kind of a longer-ish message, so I won't read all of it, but it starts with, I've not been able to be intentional. How to be, though? It's like all I want to do is be on autopilot. I want to have hobbies like reading, scrapbooking, and doodling, but my energy never feels full enough. It's also because of having 0 friends, and I am 27. My energy doesn't recharge from having people ever. I think they meant like hang out with people. I don't know if you can relate to that. I do get into that. And I definitely do not feel recharged by stimulation. This is where I got a little bit confused with the rest of this question. The rest of the question I'll have on the screen, but basically talk about introversion and not feeling stimulated by introvert activities or extrovert activities. How to be more intentional. For starters, the first part of the question is what I want to get into, because this is something I have much experience with. I feel like I'm a very intentional being now. You know, we're not all perfect. I'm definitely not perfect. But I think I have a good answer on how to be more intentional. And that goes partially along with your energy never feeling full. So I feel like there's this idea that doing things is always bringing your energy down. You come home from work, so you feel tired, so you don't want to do anything else because you don't want to feel more tired. I disagree with this. You know, I think obviously for some people, also with answering this question in general, my answer may not help people that are chemically, clinically depressed, because that's kind of a different thing in terms of having no energy. Obviously, if you know that about yourself, like you can talk to a doctor and whatnot, but I think if you're just generally don't feel like you're intentional, don't feel that you have enough energy to do anything outside of what you have to do, here's what I say to that. I believe you can get more energy by doing things. At first, it may feel a little bit more exhausting, but in the long run, doing things that you enjoy, doing things that feel intentional outside of your job, school, whatever, will begin to give you life, literally. I know sometimes I'll come home from work, I'm like, I'm so tired, all I want to do is lay down. And then I have a split-second moment where I consider laying down for 4 hours, or I consider sitting up and doing something. And when I choose in that moment to sit up and do something, somehow, oh my god, I'm awake. Like, let's do this thing. I feel that it's a bit unbelievable until you do it, until you get into that habit of it almost, because then it's like a flip of a switch. You can do it pretty easily. You know, when you're at work or at school, you're nodding off, you're feeling tired, and then you stand up to go to the bathroom, get some water, whatever. Suddenly, you have energy again. Suddenly, you're awake. That same feeling happens when you do things you enjoy. Oh my god, this is such like bootstraps, put yourself by your bootstraps ass advice, but hear me out. There's like that split second where you think, should I keep laying here, or should I get up? Should I start doodling? Should I start scrapbooking? And you have to react in that split second, because it's so easy to start overthinking the second that you give it more thought. If I want to start scrapbooking, do I have time to do it? All of those things will always stop you from being intentional and doing what you want to do. You have to do it before your brain even realizes that you're doing it. Like the other day, I think it was in the morning, I woke up and I was on my phone. I was feeling so tired. A second of a thought where I remembered, oh, I should do some journaling this morning. I should do my artist's way this morning. I immediately put my phone down and I sat up. I reached over and grabbed my journal. And before I could talk myself out of journaling, which I have done a few times, not saying this is the fail-proof way, but before your brain even thinks about it, just fucking do it. Impulse reaction, go on the impulse, don't overthink it. I'm an overthinker. Literally in the morning, the reason I don't do my journaling in the morning half the time, even though I'm supposed to, anyways, is because I overthink, oh, I don't have enough time, I don't want to be running late because I wrote this morning, and that stops me from doing it in the morning sometimes. And that's something that I want to be more intentional about, and we're still working towards it, but I think the more I think about it, the more I try to do it in the morning, the easier it becomes, the easier it is to just do it. So for the next part of your question, where you feel like you don't recharge with your friends, I can definitely relate to this. I don't really feel that I recharge when I'm with friends. In some ways I do. I think there's certain people that I do recharge with because it doesn't even feel like I'm with another person. It kind of just feels like I'm with an extension of myself. My roommate, all my roommates that I had, I can recharge with them. But with other people, I think that after I'm done hanging out with people, I definitely feel a little bit drained. I think that's very natural as well. I don't know if we're necessarily asking how to fix this problem, but I think it's similar to being more intentional and getting energy through doing things, where being more social, hanging out people I love, you begin to grow a tolerance for what you can do, and that kind of spreads out through the rest of your life. That it's not so demotivating but motivating. I think trying to find friends, there are definitely still third spaces, and I think go along with being more intentional, deciding this day this week, I'm not going to go straight home from work, I'm going to go to this art class. And guess what? Maybe you'll meet a friend there. Maybe you'll feel motivated by them. Kind of put yourself on a schedule until the schedule feels natural, and then you'll have more room to try to do things, not have to think about being intentional. Eventually you just will be more intentional. Yeah, overall, I think that answered your question. Also, you mentioned that you're 27. I'm 24. And 27 is young as shit. In Sex and the City, that show, season 1, the women are in their 30s. 27 is very young. Season 1, Sex and the City didn't even start yet. So if you want to be more intentional, girl, you have time to do it. So my last question, which I thought this one was a bit interesting. I'm not sure if I'm going to answer it correctly, but I thought it was a good little thought experiment. So the question says, where does love for self and another come from? I don't mean existentially. I would truly like a perspective and conversation on where and how does love for the human that we are and the human that is another come from? I know the reason is wanting to love, but sometimes it's like I can't contain it in my heart and I just let it go. It feels infuriatingly unnecessary. If this is infuriating, maybe it's not even love. So asking where does love for the self and another come from, and not in an existential way. First I was like, huh? Obviously I know what existential means, but isn't that if we don't think about this in an existential way, we must think about it in a more nihilistic way. So after thinking about it, I feel that self-love and love for another comes from our body's natural instinct to keep ourselves alive and to protect the people in our community. I think the idea of self-love in this day and age has the existential side usually pinned to it. That self-love comes from treating yourself with things and food, and I think self-love comes from just keeping yourself alive. The purest form of self-love is just keeping yourself alive. There are very basic things that a person does to keep themselves alive that are self-love that I think are very overlooked. You also mentioned love for another. Again, very natural. To keep yourself alive, to keep your community alive, you have to keep each other alive. This question made me think about millions of years ago, the early people that inhabited the earth, the fossils that we've found in modern times. There are examples of the earliest of people taking care of one another by finding bones that are mended bones where it's clearly healed over, something that a person who was left alone wouldn't be able to do by themselves. There's evidence that those people lived longer than would have been naturally expected of them because someone was taking care of them. Obviously, I wasn't alive millions of years ago, but clearly love for self and love for one another did exist. It's a natural part of our being. for most people. But I think with that same idea, especially with talking about caring for another person, there is always going to be this existential layer to it. Because even for the early people way back when, they had gods, they had obvious love for one another. The same way it's natural just to keep yourself alive and keep your community alive, I think it's also very natural to need to assign kind of a greater meaning to why you love one another, you know, wanting to be loved by one another. We would be dead without it. I also thought that it was interesting how you mentioned that it can feel infuriatingly unnecessary. Because I actually like kind of get what you mean by that. Sometimes there are just so many emotions where it's like, ugh! And what was it all for? And what was it all for? Because emotions aren't tangible. They come and go, but you can't like get rid of them necessarily. I also think it's interesting how you mentioned that if it's infuriating, is it even love? And I think yes, I think love can be infuriating. Obviously, there's the idea that love is positive feeling, good feelings. In the I don't know if the dictionary term of love is happiness, but love being infuriating means that it's there. I think that it makes it passionate, which is a part of love. Passion and love go together. Same way that passion and hate go together. Being infuriated by love also kind of proves that it's worthwhile, that it's important. You wouldn't be mad about something if it wasn't important. I do get what you mean that is this love, but it's if you think of love in the context of the Valentine's Day heart type love, romantic love. But I think love has a spectrum, maybe some that aren't as easily identifiable as Valentine's Day romantic love. So I don't know if I exactly answered your question, but it was a little fun thought experiment about what is love, you know? Where does love come from? To round this whole video out, I just want to talk about some self-love in general. I do also want to point out that sometimes you don't love yourself. Sometimes the self-love is not really there. But it's important to maintain a very minimal baseline level of self-love so that when you are starting to feel better, you can more easily rebound. I think sometimes it can last a few months, maybe a year or two, where you really just don't have much compassion for yourself, but you should. To do even the smallest bit that you can to love yourself. There is no cookie cutter way to love yourself, but it's worth trying. When you have things that you can detach from yourself that you love, and then it's also a reflection of you, it makes it easier to love yourself. So if you're feeling a little down right now, no, it's okay. It's not your fault that you're not feeling it, but that it's important that you just try to feel it. All right, so that's that portion of the video. So I want to take a little quick second to talk about my channel. So with my channel, my last deep dive-ish main video that I made, one of my sort of video essay ones, it was a different style than I usually do, but I thought it was so fun I needed to switch it up, and honestly I felt very creatively fulfilled in a way that I haven't felt in a few months. Not that my recent videos haven't been making me creatively fulfilled, because I've had elements of each video that I have felt fulfilled in, but I think doing a video in a whole kind of different style, not entirely different but different enough, made me realize how I wanted to progress my channel a little bit. So I'm not saying that every video going forward is going to be the sort of storytelling, like story arc with the cinematic shots, even though I do think that's fun. I do kind of want to lean more into personality based videos, still doing my video essays, but I think it's so fun to incorporate myself into it because that's obviously such a big part of my perspective on topics. And also I think videos where I actually get to go do something or just do something in my house make me feel more connected to the content rather than just talking about something I saw on the internet. Like I still plan on talking about things that I saw on the internet, but I want to incorporate more to them. I do still plan on making some sit down videos, talking head videos. I have a lot of fun ideas for some media analysis. And obviously there's some internet stuff that I want to talk about, like if it's more talking head style, I'll definitely do that. But the other major thing with kind of a channel update is I haven't had TikTok 2 months, maybe a little bit longer, and I don't really plan on re-downloading it. So I feel as I've been a little bit out of the internet loop. I feel like with being more heavily online, it was like I was just seeing stupid shit that doesn't matter. Not that the videos that I make matter, but for example, I don't foresee myself making a video about, I don't know, the new overconsumption thing that people are doing in just talking about that by itself. Like, yeah, we get it. People buy shit a lot and it's getting worse and worse. And I just kind of want my videos to fit in with sort of a bigger message, bigger meaning, or just more personal, more fun, like sillier, or talk about fun movies. I don't know, like for a long time I haven't, even like as a watcher, been watching as much sit and react content, and I just kind of want to switch it up. We'll see exactly how it goes. I'm still figuring out the kinks of things. I have some fun video ideas planned, but if you are subscribed to me for my hot takes about shit that's happening on TikTok, I'm afraid it may not occur necessarily again. Maybe it will, but yeah, I don't plan on re-downloading. I don't feel like accepting those terms and conditions. I don't really give a fuck about people stealing my data. Collect my name and age, whatever. But I don't know, there's just like layers to that being bought by the US and like everything. So I'm just gonna avoid it for the time being. Plus it's better for my mental health, low-key anyways. I will still be talking about internet topics. Don't get me wrong. I still spend a lot of time online, but I think they'll be a bit different. If you enjoy this video, thank you, like and subscribe. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye.